Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Allen, and I'm from Deque Systems. I hope everyone is having an amazing AxeCon. I'm here today to talk to you about how we can take some of the tools that your development team are already using and start to integrate accessibility testing into those tools. So, who's going to get the most out of today's talk? I think two groups will benefit most. First, developers who are new to accessibility. You might be really familiar with modern development workflow, but you don't know how accessibility testing can fit into that workflow. And second, accessibility professionals who know accessibility really well, but don't know the development workflow or need ideas about where accessibility automation can fit into that workflow. If you fall into one or both of these two groups, I really hope I can leave you with some fresh ideas today. And if not, don't worry, come along for the ride and you might learn something new along the way. Okay, I've proudly stated that my talk is for beginners, but the word beginner might be a little bit subjective. So let me state my assumptions. And by doing so, make it really clear about what I'm not covering today. We all believe that accessibility is important. Of course, creating change within an organization requires changes to people, process, and tools. But we're going to be focusing on tools today. We also know that there is more to accessibility testing than just running an automated tool. However, automation is still really important and a cost-effective way of improving your accessibility. We all believe that automation is important, and we all believe that catching bugs early while in your development environment is way better than having customers catch them in production. Today, I'll be focused on automation for the web, but many of the concepts are transferable to native mobile and desktop apps. Finally, there are other web accessibility testing products out there, but today we'll be focusing on Deque products. If you like the ideas I'm presenting but can't use Deque tools for some reason, I encourage you to search for other tools. No matter what you do, it's critical that we work together to improve digital equality. The magic of integrating accessibility automation into your development workflow is that you can catch many bugs early and very cheaply. We've all experienced how much more expensive and time-consuming it is to fix issues found in production versus those caught during development. This is why we talk about shifting left, moving our testing earlier in the process. Think about it like building a house. It's much easier to move a wall while you're still in the planning phase than after you've already built it. There was a white paper published by IBM in 2008 that suggests that the cost of discovering defects after release are significant, up to 30 times more than if you catch them in the design and architectural phase. So let's get started defining our development workflow for the purposes of today. I've summarized the workflow as sort of three critical processes that almost all front-end development teams will use. First, we have the process of writing code. This usually involves a very fancy text editor known as an integrated development environment, or IDE for short. These fancy text editors have all kinds of amazing tools built in to help developers write better code. All modern IDEs can be extended too. So just like your web browser, IDE users can shop around for extensions and make them do more. Second, we have the process of testing locally. When building websites, testing locally can take many forms. But one thing that is almost guaranteed is that front-end developers will be pulling up a web browser to make sure their front-end change worked, right? So they pull up Chrome, they refresh, and they make sure that the change they made is now in the website and it's working correctly. We all take web browsers for granted, but they really are amazing pieces of software. Browsers are also extensible, and that opens up cool opportunities for accessibility. All right, finally, after developers are convinced their code changes are looking good, they want to add their code to the current product. And most development teams have processes set up so that an individual developer can't simply add their code to the product, right? Developers go through a process of submitting their code for review by their team. This process of code review is done once developers submit a pull request, sometimes called a merge request, and developers submit their pull request, and two things typically happen, right? One, other members of the development team are invited to review their code changes, and two, more automated tests are carried out on the code the code changes that have been submitted to make sure that the code meets the team's standards or the organization's standards. So we're going to look at 5 tools that roughly fit into this workflow. Let's take a look at them. VS Code is an example of an IDE where developers will be writing code. Google Chrome is a web browser where developers might test locally. Cypress is an end-to-end testing framework which can automatically control your web browser to help you test your websites and web apps. Developers might choose to run their end-to-end tests while testing locally or when submitting a pull request. GitHub Actions, a tool which can be used to run automated checks when developers submit a pull request. And finally, Slack, a communications tool, which development teams might use throughout the entire process. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to do a quick demo of each tool and show you how each tool can be supercharged with accessibility feedback. First up then, we're going to look at VS Code, an IDE, and the Axe Accessibility Linter. If you're new to linters, it's a bit like a spell check for your code. The Axe Accessibility Linter will provide you with instant accessibility feedback inside of VS Code. It provides feedback on HTML, React, Vue, and Angular code. And as you edit your code, you'll get the feedback you need to make your components more accessible. All right, let's just take a look at a demo because I think that just makes the whole thing a lot easier to understand. So I'm going to jump out of my presentation here and go into VS Code and we'll see what we're talking about. So let me pull up VS Code. I'm going to make my text a little bit bigger so we can all see it. And then what I've got pulled up here is a React app. I'm looking at some JSX code. I'm looking at a mixture of native HTML and custom components. So I'm going to edit this H2 element here, and I'm going to remove the inner text. And as you can see, as I remove that, I immediately get this red wavy line underneath my H2. And if I hover over that red wavy line, I get a little tooltip pop over, which says that there's an empty heading and ensure headings have discernible text, which is really cool. I get that instant feedback about the accessibility of the code I'm writing as I'm writing it. Let's see what happens if I make a couple of mistakes. So let's add ARIA required to an H2, see what happens there. Again, the red wavy line is there, but this time I get 2 issues, right? Ensure an element's role supports its ARIA attributes, and I still get the empty heading rule. You'll see there's a link here as well, which is kind of neat. If I click on that link, I will actually go to a Deque University page, which gives me a lot more information about the impact of this issue, why it's an issue, which disabilities it affects, examples of bad code, and ideas for fixing this issue. So that's super cool too. Let me go back to VS Code real quick then. All right, I'm going to take this back to how I had it because I want to make sure that, I don't make my web app any less accessible. And then let's talk about custom components. So I've just demonstrated how you can edit HTML, right? Just regular old HTML. I can edit and get fast feedback. But that's really not the reality for a lot of teams these days, a lot of developers. What they're doing, right, is they're actually editing and creating their web pages with components maybe from components they've made or from a central component library that your company has. So how does the linter deal with that? Well, we have a linter configuration file, which helps the linter work out where to provide feedback when component consumers are using components from your component library. So the idea is you define a component schema and Linter can figure out when to raise accessibility issues related to those custom components. Those are a lot of words. That's a lot of a lot of those words were component. Let's see what this looks like because I think with an example, it'll help clear things up. So let's go to another JSX page that I've got pulled up here. This is for a recipe website, and I'm showing a bunch of recipes, and you can see I've got this card custom component here, and there's a few children of this component. I've got card media, I've got card content, I've got card actions. And I want to be able to lint these different components, right? Let's look at this example with card media. All this is doing is actually introducing an image to the page. So I can tell the linter, hey, lint this custom component like you would a native HTML image. So how do I do that? Well, I go to my linter configuration file and I say card media :img. And what that tells the linter is, hey, when you see this card media component, lint it as you would a native img element. So what does that mean in practice? In practice, it means if I was to remove the alt text of this image, I immediately get that red wavy line again. And again, I'll get the same completely the same experience of having this little tooltip, and it tells me where I've gone wrong with the accessibility of this component. All right. So again, let me change that back so that I leave things in the state that I found them. That is the Axe Accessibility Linter real quick. And to install the linter, you simply look up Axe Accessibility Linter from the VS Code marketplace and install it from there. Now, while the linter is great, it's a great start, it doesn't have the full page context, right? We're doing this analysis statically. We're not rendering the code, so we can't test as much. So we need that full page context in order to be able to test more. And that's where browser-based testing comes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up an example. We're going to go back to my recipe site, and we're going to look at what we can achieve in the browser. So I'm going to pull up Google Chrome now, and I've got my recipe site up, and I'm going to look at Axe DevTools for web browser extension. So I'm right-clicking, I'm hitting inspect to pull up Chrome DevTools, and then I'm finding the Axe DevTools extension within here. I can click one button, full page scan, and I'll get very quick automated results. You can see that the extension found 26 issues, and these issues are categorized by severity: critical, serious, moderate, and minor, which helps me kind of prioritize these issues as I'm looking at all these issues on my website. But, perhaps I'm not editing the whole page. Usually you're kind of editing like one little piece of the web page. So how do you handle that? Well, you can actually do a partial scan. So let's look at that. So in this case, I'm going to just scan the footer. So I selected partial scan. I'm selecting the footer. Then I hit scan. Now what I get is I just get results related to that element that I selected. Okay, so I only get the issues related to the footer in this case. And you can see I found a lot less. I've got just 2 issues. Let's look at some of the features of the actual report itself. I can click highlight, and that's going to put a nice pink purple kind of focus ring around the issue on the actual web page itself. I can inspect the element too, which takes me to the code within the rendered code within Chrome DevTools. So I can do a little bit of investigation to see why this might be an issue. And I can also share the issue. So I can click share issue, and what that's going to do is it's going to create a web page, and that link is going to be copied to my clipboard, and I can share that with the rest of my team. That web page includes a screenshot, includes your CSS selectors, includes basically all the information you need to reproduce the issue. So that is full page scan and partial scan. But what happens if I want to kind of do more than automated testing, right? Perhaps I'm really keen. I want to go past my automated test. How do I do that? Well, I can do my full page scan again. And then I can say, you know what, I want to go further. So I can click on guided tests and I can choose to save this report. So I'm going to do AxCon 2025. That's the name of my report. And then I can choose one of my guided tests. In this case, I'm going to choose to test my images. There's loads of images on this page. I'm going to hit start. And what the extension is going to do is it's going to automatically find all of the images on my page, which is great. It's going to save me a bunch of time. And it's going to ask me to select some images to test. So I'm going to select two that are going to make for a good demo. Select these two here, and then I'm going to hit next. Now, based on my selection, the tool is going to start asking me questions about those images. In this case, it's saying select all of the images that are used solely as decoration. And it goes a little bit further. It also explains what decorative image means in this case. In my opinion, these two images are both decorative. So I'm going to select all. All right, and then I'm going to hit next. Now, the cool thing is, now that I've given this an answer to a very simple question, the tool is able to figure out if these issues now represent like proper violations, proper accessibility issues. In this case, it's determined that they are issues, and so they've written up the issues, and the tool's written up the issues and added it to my accessibility report, which is cool. All right, so I'm going to hit finish, and it's going to take me back to the whole list of intelligent guided tests. There's seven of these advanced tests, some of these are intelligent guided tests, and they're all super, super handy. All right, one more feature in the browser that I wanted to show you, which is kind of cool because it's a new feature. It's called user flow analysis. And what user flow analysis does is it lets me be basically super lazy. Um, the it the thing it lets me do is instead of like navigating to different page states, getting my website in different page states and having to hit full page scan every single time, I can put the web browser in like a listening mode, and it's going to scan the page and then sort of listen for page state changes. Things are happening on the page, and when it sees that, oh, actually something's changed here that might affect the accessibility, I'm going to scan again. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to hit scan user flow. And what it's going to do is it's going to analyze the page. It's going to do an axe core scan. You can see it's found some issues, and it says waiting for user input. So I'm going to then open up a modal by clicking on this cook chocolate cake button. And you can see the tool detected a state change, and it's going to do another analysis automatically. And then I'm going to click close. And again, the tool recognizes, oh, something changed with the state. I'm going to analyze the page and give you some results back. Now I'm done testing. I can select stop scanning, and the tool is then going to generate a really nice report with all duplicates removed, which is really cool. And the kind of report that I get is basically what you would expect, right? I can hit view report, and you're going to get a report of accessibility issues that are categorized by severity. So you can really prioritize those issues. You're going to see, issues categorized critical, serious, moderate, and minor. And one thing I wanted to stress, these issues are deduplicated. So if you scanned the same page, or pretty much the same page in slightly different states, all those duplicates are going to get removed. All right. So that's testing locally with the browser, and you can install the Axe DevTools for Axe DevTools web browser extension by searching Axe DevTools within the Chrome Web Store or Edge add-ons, and just install it from there. All right. So what's next? Well, testing within the browser is great, but it can be time consuming, especially if you want full coverage of your web app. That's where I see end-to-end testing coming into play. So with end-to-end testing, you can programmatically drive the browser and get your app into all sorts of weird and wonderful states. So wouldn't it be cool if you could take all of that investment that your team has made in end-to-end testing and get accessibility testing for free? And that's what Axe Developer Hub is really great at. Now, before we dive into that tool, I want to kind of demystify end-to-end tests a bit because I think once we see an example, they make a lot more sense. They're kind of pretty self-explanatory. So let me take a look at the a couple of examples in VS Code, and hopefully we can start to understand what this whole end-to-end testing business is all about. All right, I'm going to just make my text a little bit smaller. So let's see this. I'm back on my recipe website here, and I've got some end-to-end tests for my recipe website. And I'm just going to walk through this line by line. So on line 3, what we're doing is we're visiting the URL. So let's see what that URL looks like. It's just the recipe website. It's got a slightly different look in this local copy. It's got nice Halloween buttons here. And what it's then doing is it's checking to see if certain elements exist within the page. Navigation elements, certain anchor links within the navigation elements. If all of those things exist, the test passed and that's all good. Now that's a functional test. There's no kind of accessibility going on here, right? Let's look at another functional test. This one, similar. It goes to the same page. It's checking that certain things are on the page. The H1, the main element, the footer element. Okay, that's not particularly exciting. So let's look at a more interesting end-to-end test. This one is testing the settings page. So let's see what the settings page looks like, and so we can get an idea of what this test might be doing. This settings page, I'll make this a little bit bigger. It's just a simple form. It lets you change your theme for this page, right? It lets you activate dark mode or light mode. All right. So if I go back to my end-to-end test again, let's try and work out what this is doing. So it's going to the settings page on line 13 here. It's checking to make sure dark mode isn't already activated on line 14. It's then clicking the radio button, submitting the form, and then making sure that dark mode is actually activated. So you can see this is kind of getting interesting now. Your end-to-end tests, these are things that are going to run automatically, remember, are now interacting with your website and getting the website into all different types of state. Very cool. Even cooler when you can add accessibility to that. All right, so let's dive into Axe Developer Hub and try to understand how that product helps with end-to-end testing. So let's go to Developer Hub. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new project so you get a sense of the UX. So first thing it does is it asks me what testing framework I'm using. In this case, I'm using Cypress. We support a whole bunch of different testing frameworks like Playwright and Puppeteer. I'm going to hit Cypress and I'll give this project a name. I'm going to say AxeCon 2025 and hit Next. And then what Developer Hub is going to do, it's going to provide me with an API key. I'm going to copy that. And then it's going to tell me how to integrate Watcher, which is a component of this product. And it integrates with my end-to-end tests. So the instructions are really simple. It just tells me, hey, I need to install a development dependency and I need to adjust some configuration files. Now, I can't stress enough this idea of just editing configuration files, right? So usually when you have to do automation and accessibility testing, you have to open up your test files and start editing them. And if you've got like hundreds or thousands of test files, this is a pain. This is a real pain. So, but the fact that we're just editing the configuration file means that we take away a lot of that pain, right? Your team don't have to open up all their test files and start editing those. Furthermore, when they're writing new tests, they don't have to remember to keep adding those accessibility tests to those new end-to-end tests. So this is a huge, huge time saver. All right, let's see how we get this set up. In the example that I've got here, I've already got a lot of this set up. So all I need to do is add my API key. So let me do that. I'm just making this a little bit smaller so I can work it out myself. All right, so I'm going to paste my API key in. And then I'm going to run my end-to-end tests as I would normally. Now, when I run these tests, Cypress is going to open and it's going to run my end-to-end test. That's going to cause a little bit of a flashing effect. So if flashing is something that affects you, this might be a good time to turn off Zoom for a second or hide the Zoom window for a second while the flashing happens. It will literally be for like 5 or 10 seconds. So I'm going to run my end-to-end tests. as I would normally. I'm not doing anything special. And Cypress is then going to open up my browser and then execute all of that code to do with end-to-end testing. Um, this is where the flashing is occurring. And eventually it will get done with all my end-to-end tests and it will give me some results back. So the results I get here are all to do with the functional tests. It tells me that 4 tests have been run and 4 tests have passed. Okay, that's cool, but I didn't get any accessibility information. So how do I do that? Well, I go back over to Axe Developer Hub, and in this case, I just say check your results. And what this is going to show me is the results from that test scan. So you can see it's processing the report, and I have an accessibility report. If I click through to that report, you'll get some interesting information. You see that we found 17 issues, and it tested 6 page states. And it's picking up those page states from your end-to-end tests. If I go to view the issues, you'll see that there's kind of the report that you know and love, right? So if I make this a little bit bigger, what you can see is that we've got issues categorized by severity. We have got the same sort of information you would find in the browser extension, like CSS selector, all that kind of stuff. We also have all of the issues deduplicated, which is great. It keeps me productive. What else have we got going on? Well, there's some other features about these reports that I really want to show you, but the only way I can do that is by editing some code. So let's go and do that and see what happens to my accessibility report. All right, so I'm going to go into my code and I am going to start breaking things, which is not something I'm used to doing. So let's see. Let's see. I'm only doing this for the sake of the demo. I would never do this usually. So we've got these Halloween buttons, black text on an orange background. I'm going to make this a white background, which I know is going to fail color contrast rules. So I'm going to hit save and I'm going to commit that change. So I'm going to say bad buttons. That's going to be my commit message. Going to hit commit. And then I'm going to run my end-to-end test as I would normally. This is going to cause that flashing again for about 10 seconds. You'll see Cypress is driving the browser, running my end-to-end tests. All right, and the Cypress tests have finished, the flashing has finished, and I get my functional test results back. And again, you can see that 4 tests ran and 4 tests passed. That's cool, but let's have a look and see what happened to my accessibility reports. Now, if I refresh this page, I'm going to see 2 test runs instead of 1 now. And the thing that's interesting is that these test reports are actually compared. That's where it gets really interesting, right? My test reports are now compared. So you can see what's going on now is my first run, I had 17 issues for 6 page states. And then my second run, I had 26 issues for the same number of page states. I created 9 new issues with my code change, the code change that I just made. So if I go into view issues, what you can see is the report not only categorizes them as critical, serious, moderate, minor, but it also categorizes new issues that I just introduced. So I can actually, so you can see my full report has got all of the issues shown. But if I only want to see my new issues, I can do that too. And then I can just see, the issues that were created by my latest code change. In this case, they were all color contrast issues related to the primary button, which is kind of what we'd expect. We kind of made those buttons worse. And that's what's being shown here in the report. But I love this kind of style of reporting because you sort of see that cause and effect, right? Like you made a code change and what impact did it have on accessibility? You can very clearly see that from this report. Okay, let's see. So what else do I want to talk about with Axe Developer Hub? Well, end-to-end testing is obviously really amazing, but it can get even better when you include accessibility testing, of course. You can run these tests locally or when you're submitting a pull request. So a lot of times teams will set up GitHub Actions to run these automated checks when a pull request has been created. So while today is not a deep dive on GitHub Actions, I want to take a minute to explain the concept to accessibility folks who might be new to the idea. Think of GitHub Actions like a little robot assistant, right, for your coding projects. Let's say you're working on a website, and every time you add code or make changes, there are things you should do. Perhaps you want to make sure that code is working properly. You want to make sure nothing else broke. You didn't break all your old stuff. You want to package everything up so your team can see the changes that you've made. Doing all this manually would be tedious, and this is where GitHub Actions comes in. GitHub Actions lets you create workflows, automated workflows, basically a list of instructions that run automatically when something happens within your code. And that something might be creating a pull request. So for example, you can set up an action to build a version of your website, make that version accessible via your URL, and then automatically run end-to-end tests on your website. The cool part is once you've set it up, it just happens automatically in the background while you focus on the fun part, right? Actually coding your website and making sure that it's super inclusive. So GitHub Actions is like having a little robot assistant that handles all these boring, repetitive tasks while you get to the interesting creative work and solving interesting problems, right? So of course, teams typically want to run the end-to-end test suite within GitHub Actions or something similar, right? And when they do that, you can include your accessibility results within your pull request. So here's an example of a pull request within GitHub. And you can see here that I've submitted my pull request, the GitHub action has run, and then the Axe Developer Hub GitHub action has added a comment to the pull request to say, these are your accessibility results. We found 28 accessibility violations in this PR, and we link over to the full report on Axe Developer Hub. We can also add linter to GitHub Actions too. So we lint the code every time a pull request is created. Once the linter action is complete, we annotate the code to show exactly which lines of code need to be fixed. So let's look at this just for a second here. So I'm showing a diff basically in GitHub pull requests, and I'm looking at a file and I'm looking at different annotations that are below the file that changed. So in this case, we're showing some images that don't have alt text, and we're showing an annotation which says, hey, this line of code failed this linting test. And so this is really like actionable feedback, right, for your development team. You can see the lines of code that failed those different lint tests. All right. Let's do another quick recap. We've walked through a lot of demos today, and thanks for sticking with me. I appreciate it. Let's go to my little recap slide here. We saw how you could get fast feedback within your IDE as you're writing your code. We saw how you could test locally in your web browser. And in your browser, you can run more thorough automated tests compared to linting. And you have the choice to increase your testing coverage even more with semi-automated tests, the intelligent guided tests. Finally, we looked at Cypress end-to-end tests and GitHub Actions. We saw that workflow might look like if you ran accessibility tests every time you submitted a pull request. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is interesting, but do I really need all of those checks in my workflow? I think for most teams, more quality gates does mean more value. And at Deque, we work really hard to solve the problem. What does good feedback look like at each stage of the development workflow? We try to provide the right feedback at the right time, and our results have zero false positives. The feedback is consistent throughout the tool chain, and it's presented in a way which makes sense for the tool that you're using. If you're not using Deque tools, these points might be worth considering as you're assessing your own tool chain, right? Am I getting the right feedback at the right time? Providing this kind of value throughout the tool chain means you greatly increase your chances of maintaining quality. Right, so far we've looked at 4 tools you're already using and 3 Deque products which integrate seamlessly into those tools. The really good news is that you can get started with all of these tools for free. Axe Accessibility Linter for VS Code is totally free. You can upgrade your experience and get loads more. Axe DevTools for web browser extension for Google Chrome can do full page automated scans for free. And again, you can pay for a subscription and get loads more. Axe Developer Hub is available for Cypress and many other testing frameworks, for example, Playwright, Puppeteer, and WebDriver IO. And you get access to one API key, which gives you access to all of the features that I demonstrated today. All right, final tool here, final demo. I have one more tool to share with you today. It's our Slack integration. This is one of the first times this product has been demoed outside of Deque, or publicly, I guess. Unlike other tools we've discussed, this tool is an education tool. It helps you get answers to your accessibility questions. Unlike other tools using large language models, it knows about all of Deque's training resources and therefore has much greater knowledge of accessibility and can provide high quality answers to accessibility questions. The idea here is that you can ask accessibility questions, really all kinds of accessibility questions. It could be about HTML, it could be about PDFs, it could be about convincing your boss about the value of doing accessibility at your company. The Slack bot will give you a good response and provides links to resources on Deque University, which is super cool. And you can imagine the kind of impact this has in the hands of experts. I just want to show you one example because we're kind of running low on time here. I'll show you this more advanced example. This is a prompt which also has made up of a text prompt and an image. The prompt says, look up the best practices for alt text in Deque University, list those best practices concisely and in layman's terms, and then use your findings to write 3 alt texts for the image provided with your reasoning about why you decided it accurately reflects the image. So what happens is I give it that prompt, it creates a thread, and it gives me a response. So in this case, it gives me best practices. I won't read them all, but I will read some of these alt text suggestions because I think it's kind of interesting. The image is an image, I would describe it as myself and my daughter kind of being goofy and eating carrots. What Axe Assistant has done is it's given me 3 suggestions with different reasoning. The first suggestion is a man and a child playfully eating carrots in a kitchen. And the reasoning is this alt text is concise and captures the main activity, eating carrots, and setting the kitchen, and it reflects the playful mood without unnecessary detail. And the second one is a bald man and a young girl smiling while holding carrots as if to eat them. This description highlights the subjects, man and child, their expression, smiling, and the action, pretending to eat carrots, and it aligns with the image's playful intent. Now, I think this is super powerful in the hands of experts, right? If you're doing research and you need quick ideas and you're getting asked questions that perhaps you don't get asked all the time, Axe Assistant can empower you to get answers to those questions very quickly. In the hands of non-experts, with great power comes great responsibility, right? You have to kind of train your team to use this kind of tool. But I would say it's worth experimenting with because there's a lot of potential, a lot of promise. All right, so going back to my slides real fast then, and let's get this thing wrapped up. I wanted to kind of give a couple of honorable mentions to 2 other methods of catching accessibility issues early in the development flow. Design review is critical. Creating designs which can be made accessible is really fundamental to any good process, but it's very hard to automate, so it didn't really fit the bill for my presentation today. Building an accessible component library is probably one of the best investments a company can make in accessibility. If you have a good component library, you prevent teams reinventing the wheel and you save yourself a world of pain. Of course, if you're managing a component library, including the types of accessibility automation we've discussed today is a really, really good idea. Okay, we've gone through a lot today, and I wanted to make sure you could quickly access the tools and resources which will get you started on your accessibility journey or get you moving faster. So if you visit github.com/BALLENDQ, that's the letters DQ, /axe-con-2025 for a whole bunch of useful links. The QR code will also get you to that GitHub link. The repo includes links to communities where we can carry on the discussion. So you can reach out on Discord, of course, you can reach out on LinkedIn or within the Axe community on Slack. All right, I think we're on time. I think we have some time for some questions right now. I just want to say thank you to everyone. I hope you all have a really wonderful conference. Julia.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. That was amazing. You really were right on the dot for timing. So thanks so much. We have a bunch of questions that have popped up. Some I noticed have been answered in the chat, and some haven't. So I'm going to try and start with the ones that haven't been answered yet.
Okay.
Um, Here's one on Axe Assistant for Slack. They're asking if it coexists with another Slack channel or if it has to be in its own channel. Jen also asked about the pricing, which I'll answer really quickly, that we do not have pricing right now because it is only in early access. But I'll let you answer that other question.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can open it as a separate channel, or you can introduce it as a participant in a discussion within an existing channel. So if you do like an app mention, if you do like at Axe Assistant, you can bring it into a conversation within your like team Slack channel. Yeah, so we support both.
Here's another one. What are the limitations of testing with Axe DevTools? Does the web content I am testing need to be publicly online, or can I use it on private networks or local content? They also are asking about data collection that they're using for or testing with it.
Yes, is the answer. Yeah, we do. We have all sorts of installation types, which will help you kind of test with the browser extension. And typically, those different installation types, whether it's kind of the out-of-the-box SaaS product or whether it's on-prem or whether it's private cloud, one of those things will help you out. If your browser can access the site, then the extension can access the site. Um, I will triple check with Harris on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Certainly, all the automated tests are kind of done locally on that the local HTML, and all of the intelligent guided tests. I'm pretty sure work that same way. But I'll triple check for you. But my understanding is, and I've been a customer of that product, and in a big financial institution, and we had all these security practices, and we were able to get it working no problem. So I can say from a customer perspective. Uh, with a lot of security concerns, we were able to get it up and running no problem.
Awesome. And then for data collection, believe that that is a feature that can be that or a piece that can be turned off, correct?
Yes, data collection can be turned off, right?
All right. Here's a good one. Why would you want to use Axe Developer Hub over simply adding Axe Core as a dependency?
Axe core is a dependency. Yeah, I mean it kind of I guess it kind of depends on that what that dependency really looks like. But
Oh, they
when
have.
you're using Axe core as a dependency, usually that workflow goes like this. You add Axe core as that dependency, and then you have to call it from each one of your end-to-end tests, right? So you actually have to open up every test, call that API to Axe core. Say, I don't know, you might make some assertion about there's no violations within that page state that you're testing. Um, and that could be a lot of work, right? We've heard from our customers that is typically a lot of work. That might lead to an implementation that takes months, right, before you get any real value back from the tool. And so with Axe Developer Hub, we've made it really easy to kind of get set up so that you get value from your whole end-to-end testing suite, right? So you don't have to edit any of your actual testing files to get value. You just edit a config file, and that config file, those changes make it such that we can add automatically those Axe Core scans to every single, not just every single test, but every single state within those tests. So we automatically detect those state changes and we run Axe Core every time we detect those state changes. So it really is kind of a game changer in terms of getting up and running and also just coverage, right? Because we're automatically figuring out when the state might change and when that might affect accessibility. Good
Um,
question.
Definitely. There's another here that's on, does the tool handle reflow and resizing requirements? I think this was during the extension that when you were presenting.
Reflow and resizing. Yeah, I mean, I think with reflow and resizing with the extension, you have to get the site actually into that state, right? And so if you were trying to test, for example, all of your different breakpoints, that might be a better job for end-to-end testing. because it would get quickly get tedious, right, with the browser extension, kind of resizing, press full scan, resizing, press full scan. So if you want to manually do that, you can do that with the extension, and it'll work just fine. But that might be a better job for end-to-end testing because save the tedious work for automation.
We have a few questions here around WCAG compliance, and does the Axe linter in VS Code comply to 2.2 or 2.1? Also asking about EAA and compliance level there. If it,
Ooh, that's a good question. I might have to follow up on that. Um, the the rules that the linter supports are in the docs. So if you go to docs.deque.com, you'll find there's a linter card, and if you click on that linter card, it will explain exactly what rules are being used. Now that's really important. I'll try and explain why. So it's really important that you understand kind of what rules the linter can catch because it can't catch everything that Axe Core can catch, right? And the reason that is there's two different types of analysis going on. When we're using linter, we're doing static code analysis, right? We're not rendering the code to see what it looks like, right? Um, we're trying to make some determinations about what's going on in snippets of code, and that limits the things that we can test, right? So really get to know those rules for linter so you understand like what it's good at and what it's not going to test. Um, if you want to get all of Axe Core rules, that's when you need to go into that browser context where you use the browser extension, where you use end-to-end testing.
right, here's another good one for the linter. What if we want linter to lint a custom component as more than one element?
Ooh, great question. Um, we are working on that. That is one of our current priorities. Yeah. So that it doesn't handle that case right now, but that is something we are actively working on because we know that a lot of our customers have quite complex components, and they want to be able to kind of lint those kind of complex components. And so we're working on a really interesting solution to that idea, which I think people will enjoy. But yeah, more to come on that. Watch this space for linting of custom components. That's definitely something we're interested in shipping this year.
Awesome. We have another person asking about recommendations for Axe tools for design processes like Figma.
Hmm. Yeah, that's not my area of expertise. We do have X for designers, so definitely take a look at that. But uh, that is not, and a lot of these tools, what they're design, a lot of the design tools, some of them are set up to do things like check your color contrast and things like that. Some of them are also set up to do things like adding accessibility annotations to your design so that you can clearly communicate from your designer to your dev team what the accessible role should be, what the accessible name should be, things like that. Um, yeah, check out Axe for Designers. If you search that online, you'll get some good docs and you'll learn a lot more about the tool. Um, if you follow up in Discord as well, I might be able to dig out some resources and put some links in there.
And thanks so much, Ben. All right, in 30 seconds or 1 minute, we have another person asking about plans to add linter support for liquid files.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that is also something we're working on. Actually, that that might be coming a lot sooner. Liquid files, yeah, for sure. I know Liquid are used in Shopify templates and GitHub Pages, I think, as well. And Liquid templates is something we're definitely working on right now. So again, watch this space. Linter is going to get some cool features, I think, this year, and Liquid template support might be one of the first things you see. So yeah, watch this space.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for a great session. A friendly reminder, you can continue the conversation in our Discord. If you haven't already signed in, I am putting that link in the chat right now. And you can share your experience on social using the AxeCon hashtag. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.